Hi, I'm Arati Patel, a Senior Manager in the Private Client team at Blick Rothenberg, and I'm joined today by Kelly Gregg and Ross McKay, also in the Private Client team. So we're here to talk about the changes to two valuable inheritance tax reliefs, agricultural property relief and business property relief, which come into effect from the 6th of April 2026. Welcome to you both. Can you briefly talk us through what the existing reliefs are for business owners and farmers?
Currently and previously, we have had some very generous reliefs for farming families and for business owners in the form of agricultural property relief and business property relief. These are two inheritance tax reliefs, so very commonly they apply on death, but they can also apply to lifetime transfers. And typically you would find that provided you met the qualifying conditions, your agricultural property or your business property could be free of inheritance tax when passed on to the next generation.
So Ross, what are the changes coming into effect from the 6th of April 2026?
As Kelly said, we've had these very generous reliefs for business property, agricultural property, been around for many years. The actual reliefs themselves in a lot of ways are not changing. That's still there. A lot of the conditions that you need to meet are still there. The one major thing that is changing is they're now going to be capped. So previously they were uncapped, so they could apply and completely wipe out an inheritance tax liability on our business property or agricultural property. From April in 2026 next year, there's going to be a cap of £1 million where it will be unlimited relief still, and above that £1 million we'll only then get a 50% reduction in our IHT rates.
Thank you, Ross. So Kelly, what, in your opinion, are the key takeaways for farmers?
So I think despite our farmers marching on Westminster and trying to petition for change to these rules and regulations, we haven't seen any backtracking from the government. So we have to assume that these rules will go ahead as planned. And therefore it's really important for our farmers to take proper advice, firstly to ensure that their assets do in fact qualify for the relief, because although we're seeing a reduction, some availability to claim inheritance tax reliefs will still be available. So let's make sure that you still qualify. And then we're looking at some short-term planning in terms of perhaps transferring assets early, definitely making reviews of your current structures in your will and the structure of ownership. But early advice from now is really what's needed.
So Ross, what are the key points for businesses to think about?
So in some ways it's the same things that Kelly covered for our farmers, what they should be thinking about as well, particularly businesses that are of a high value, so over £1 million, they'll be going from having full business property relief to it being reduced, so they should be thinking about what are they going to do about that. There's many different options. So one of the things that business owners may think about, if it's a business they want to pass on to the next generation, do they want to think about giving it away in their lifetime? And if they do that, if they survive 7 years, then that can completely wipe out the IHT liability. There's also a limited opportunity if they want to, perhaps if the next generation's not ready to completely control the business, they don't want to relinquish full ownership to, there's a limited opportunity to perhaps put the business into a trust and get full IHT relief going into a trust if they do that before April 26. But as Kelly said, it's really businesses that are going to be affected by this having a review to make sure they still get the relief. It's still, whilst it's not as generous as it used to be, it still is a valuable relief for these businesses. So to look at that, to take advice and get a review of their current business.
This is also going to impact trustees in light of the non-dom changes and many trusts falling within the relevant property regime. Do you have any thoughts?
I think, as we've said throughout the whole of this is going to come down to early review. So reviewing those current structures, reviewing the assets within those structures, perhaps looking at whether any distributions might be able to be made before April 26, and not forgetting that new structures could also be created before April, taking advantage of the ability to get APR and BPR assets into those structures before the new legislation comes into force.
To add to that, we do have a limited opportunity for any existing trusts to actually distribute assets within the and maybe collapse the trust if that's the right answer before they get to reach their next 10-year anniversary, and to do that under our sort of old APR and BPR rules.
So the £1 million cap is not transferable between spouses. Is there anything married couples should be thinking about?
Yes. So obviously on that, on death, you effectively can waste that £1 million allowance if you leave everything to your spouse, because you get the spousal exemption on that. So one thing to think about could be, and it really depends on the family dynamics, leaving perhaps £1 million of the business to the next generation, to your children, and in that way you do utilise that allowance. But it's not going to be the right answer for all families.
And I think we go back to when the nil rate band was not transferable, and we dig up the whole nil rate band discretionary will trust that we were drafting. And in fact, we still draft, but for other reasons. So it's going to be very sensible for people that have APR and BPR assets that are married couples to be revisiting their wills and making sure that they are looking at trust provisions, perhaps discretionary trusts of that allowance, to ensure that they're maximising the reliefs between them so that they can potentially get more than the £1 million allowance.
Thank you, Kelly and Ross, for your time today. So if you'd like to learn more about the changes to APR and BPR and what the impact will be, please reach out to myself, Ross or Kelly, or your usual Blick Rothenberg contact.